Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I'm your host Henna Zuberi and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. We will be discussing the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, which we are hoping will pass through the House today. The Policy Act Bill 178 places sanctions on the Chinese government and protects the Uyghurs diaspora community here in the United in we call it name of the region. The emerging testimonies of human rights act abuses have worsened. For years, China has been detaining ethnic Uyghurs and other minorities in re-education camps. These concentration camps are estimated to hold between 1 to 3 million Muslims, many indefinitely, and most are held without trial. There is no public information surrounding these camps. Joining us today is Sulayman Aziz. Sulayman Aziz, now residing in the United States, does not know where his younger brother Alim is held. Aziz heard Alim was sentenced without trial to 10 years in prison, either due to his travel to Turkey or from allegations of attending a Uyghur Academy meeting. To the Chinese state, either are signs of religious extremism. When Aziz attended a protest of the Chinese Communist Party treatment of Uyghurs in front of the European Commission building in Brussels on April 27, 2018, he met a friend of Alim's. This friend confirmed Alim was sentenced to 10 years and sent to prison in a place named Korla. The train between Golmud and Korla connects East Turkestan, as the Chinese call it Xinjiang, to the larger area of China. Now, in the show, we've talked about this several times, about the forced migration of Uyghurs from their homeland into mainland China. While many believe it to be a site of forced labor with extremely poor conditions, more worrying it is where others believe it to be the heart of forced organ harvesting for Uyghur prisoners. So today, Alhamdulillah, we have Sulayman Aziz, and we welcome him on the show. And we are hoping that he can shed some light on the situation there, and he can share with us the story of his brother. And we are going to be asking all of you watching that to adopt this case as a case of concern for yourselves, just as if your brother was imprisoned by an oppressive regime. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, sister.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for being such a strong voice of advocacy for your people, and particularly for your brother. So take us, I would like you to tell me a little bit about yourself. You're here in the United States now. How long have you been here?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me in this very special day, because today we are expecting this Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act is going to be passed. So thank you very much. And I'm Uyghur. I've been in US for almost already 10 years now, since 2009. I came to University of Texas to study public health. And since then, I've been in US working as a HIV, STD, and tuberculosis epidemiologist. And recently, since last July, I moved to Virginia, working as a senior epidemiologist for suicidal prevention in US military. And another purpose to move to Virginia is I could go to a Congress to meet with those politicians, talk about Uyghur issue, talk about my families. That's why I'm here.
So we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Aziz. So as I know it, you moved here from Tennessee, and I've heard you talk on numerous occasions. You were a part of our panel at ISNA, where you had gone over the history of your people and the history of East Turkestan, and educated the thousands of people that come to ISNA, which is the Islamic Society of North America's convention, with one of the largest Muslim conventions in the country. So when did you start talking openly about, when did you make that transition of being a student and just, working your daily life to actually getting up and talking about your people?
In 2016 June, my brother was arrested, and that time we didn't know about anything about this concentration camps and the persecution about Uyghur people and the jail, all those things. But I heard the news that my brother Alim Sulayman was arrested in June 2016 just because he went to Turkey to study Turkish, and for 6 months, and he returned back home. Actually, he was a dentist. He worked in a hospital in Shire County, the hospital called Uyghur Traditional Medicine Hospital. So after my brother was arrested, it was sad news. And then my mother, and I have 5 sisters, they all were very scared. They didn't want to contact with me. And then they removed me from all their WeChat accounts, so I couldn't contact with them for a long time. And then I've been keep calling my mother because I was worrying so much about her. And in August 2016, my mother answered my phone and said, "Don't call me again." That was the last time I heard her voice. And she hung up. Since then, I lost all my contacts with my sisters, my mother, all my relatives. And I don't know their whereabouts. It's been almost 4 years now. Since then, I was being active, and then in 2018 started, I really become active to tell the world what happened to Uyghur people in East Turkestan. And I went to all the protests. I went to New York from Tennessee all the way to in front of UN building, and I went to Brussels in European Commission building to protest with other Uyghur brothers together. And there I heard the news about my brother. He was sentenced to 10 years for prison just because he went to Turkey to study Turkish. So I've been being active after my work in Tennessee. I participated in meetings to talk about Uyghur issues in colleges and synagogues. I told about what happened to Uyghur people, all the persecutions. So I've been being active, but I should be active more and more strong. So thank you for having me for this program.
Yes. No, we're this is being broadcast on Muslim Network TV. It has been broadcast on satellite. It's beaming into people's homes. A lot of people who are not on social media, a lot of people who are not on activist circles, because a lot of times we're talking to a bubble. We don't understand. I might hear this story, you might hear several stories like this, but a lot of the Muslim community or just the wider community does not know what is going on. So when you say that he was extrajudicially arrested, what does that mean? Was he in Turkey and then he was taken away from there? Or was he in East Turkestan and he was picked up from? What do you know?
Okay. I'll tell you a little story. My brother Alim, he was an artist and he was a dentist. He worked with me in Urumqi in East Turkestan. That's a capital city. of so-called Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region in China.
Mhm.
Xinjiang means new territory, by the way, but we call it East Turkestan. And so we worked together in dental clinic. I was a dentist. So I got a scholarship from Ford in 2009, and we had a big protest riot in July 5th. And right after this riot, I left to the US for my study, but my wife and my two kids were there. They didn't have passport. And that time for Uyghur people, getting passport was extremely difficult. You need to have money, you need to have a relationship with Chinese officials. So I traded my whole clinic with 3 passports. And after
Oh,
1 year
wow.
later,
Subhanallah.
my wife and my twin girls, they got their passport and we joined in US here. It was very, very expensive passport. Approximately, it's more than 100,000 RMB, that's Chinese dollar. But that time, my brother couldn't get passport. It was difficult, and he wanted to come to US. He wanted to go to other countries. He's a young man. He was not married. But in 2014, China made this passport issue very easy for Uyghur people. And this is, we didn't know it was a passport scheme that help people to get passport easily and they go abroad. And then in 2015 started, anybody who's in abroad, they have to come back, otherwise their parents, relatives will be in jail. So a lot of Uyghur people didn't know, and they went back home just because they would like to protect their parents. And then as soon as they arrived, they were arrested in the airport. Or if they don't go back home and their parents or wives, relatives were in jail. So my brother Alam, he got his passport in 2014, and he wanted to come to US, but his visa application was denied, and then he went to Turkey. And he studied Turkish about 6 months there, and then he saw maybe life is better for him to go back home. Since my mother is an elderly lady, she is 75 years old. She's been keep asking at least one son should be with her. So she said I should go back home. And then he went to back home in Shayar County, and there he worked in Uyghur traditional medicine hospital. He worked as a dentist. He worked for about a year, and he met a pretty girl, a nurse in the hospital, and they engaged to get married right after Ramadan. It was June 2016. It was about ending of the Ramadan, just before Eid. I called my mother, and then they were so silent. Their son so unhappy, and I asked her what happened, and she didn't tell me. And then later on, I called my sister, and she told me my brother was taken. I forgot. In 2014, my brother went to Turkey. And then in the beginning, in early 2015, he returned back. And as soon as he returned back to the airport, he was interrogated by the police. And he was so scared, and I was scared, but he was not arrested that time. Before he returned, I told him, don't go back, stay in Turkey. And then he bought the airplane ticket, and then I advised him not to go. And finally, he returned ticket. And after 1 month later, he bought the ticket again. And I told him, don't go, because the situation is so bad. But he said I had to go back. And he went back, and he was taken. So
That's so fun.
that's
So
the
I'm going
situation.
to ask a question. So this is a theme that I've heard in many interviews, is that the passports were given and young people traveled to other countries, and then it was like a net was cast. Ease the restrictions, ease everything. People dropped their guard. they're not as vigilant anymore because they're thinking, okay, things are getting better and we're going to be allowed to travel and getting a passport is easier. But it was almost like they had cast a net, and now we're pulling all these people in who they thought might be, troublesome or so is this something that you're seeing, that this has happened to other young people across the board as well?
Yes, yes, that's the trap. I call it easy passport scheme because it's been so hard for Uyghur people to get passport before 2014. I just told you that I got 3 passports for my family for whole clinic.
Yeah.
That's a cost. But my brother and some other people got passports so easily, and they travel, and if China asks them to come back, if they don't come back, their relatives, parents, they're all locked up. So some of them went back, and I heard the testimonials from people all over the world, and some of them went back and they were arrested right in the airport. So this is this was like planned, and we didn't know.
You
that.
have other relatives in.
I didn't know. My mother.
So you have other relatives there right now?
I couldn't hear what you say. I couldn't hear your question.
I was asking, your mother is there. You have other relatives that's over there right now?
Yes, I have 5 sisters and a mother, and I have some other relatives, cousins, but I don't know their phone numbers now. But I know my mother's phone number and my sister's phone number. I used to call them like every other day, sometimes every day to my mother. So now their phone, none of their phone is working. So it says the phone is not exist, phone number is not exist. So I couldn't call them. And I don't know what happened to them, but in the beginning of, right after my brother was arrested, I heard that the people who went Hajj was arrested as well. So I was so much worried about my mother because she went Hajj about 20 years ago with my father twice. And maybe she was locked up. I didn't know anything about it. But recently, through indirect way, I got to know that my mother was outside of the camp. She is at home. But I didn't know about my sisters at all. So I hope they're out. But I heard that one of my brother-in-law, he is a wealthy businessman in Shire County. And he also went to Hajj. He's a very good Muslim, but he was arrested and he was also sentenced to many years in prison. Some people said 10 years, some people said 20 years. I don't know exactly how many years he was sentenced to. I have his picture as well here. I can show you. It's my brother-in-law. He has 2 kids, a son and a girl. And I don't know his son and his daughter because many children were become orphaned after parents were locked up. So I was so much worried about my niece and my cousins, not only my sisters now. And then I tried to call police in Shire County. I called the government. I called the hospital because 2 of my sisters work in the same hospital. One of them is a doctor. The other one is a lab technician. She works in ultrasound and EKG. So the people who answered my phone said, this is not a hospital. This is a private phone. And then when I called police, the Chinese people especially, they answered, said, this is my private phone. This is not a police station. So I couldn't call police station, no government, no hospital, nobody. So I lost contact with my families. It's almost 4 years. This end of June, it will be 4 years since I lost contact with them.
And so when and it's so important as we talk that we all should know the names of these people, because a lot of times it becomes numbers, and it loses that human touch. So people don't connect. This was your brother. Tell us more about him. Tell us more about Alim, right? Alim is his name.
Alam, yes.
What
Yes.
was he like? How younger is he? Is he the youngest in the family?
Yes, he is the youngest in the
So he was
family.
the baby of the family.
Yes, he was spoiled baby in the family. This is
Tell us more
a
about
picture. Yeah, this is his picture.
how
I've been showing.
growing
Um,
up.
yes, I've been showing this picture all over. He's now 34 years old. He was artist because he went to art school when he was very young. He liked to draw pictures. Later on, he interested in dentistry, so he worked with me in my dental clinic, and he learned so well because he's the artist. So he makes this dentures, the crowns, so pretty, so real, and people wanted to go to him, not me, even though he learned it from me. So he is so admirable, and he has not. Sorry. And so I worked with him in the same clinic for almost 5 years. So we have very. Sorry for that. We have very good relationship. The brother and he's a friend. He's a good guy. So so after I left from him, he was sad, and he wanted to come, but his visa was application was refused, and then he went to Turkey. I told you, and after he went back, he wanted to get married, and then it was Ramadan, so they engaged and they got a house and everything, and right after Eid prayer, they already planned all the marriage things, and my mother was so happy that her last son will be married very soon, and but he was taken just before that.
SubhanAllah. Then these are long. Like, so I wanted to ask you, while you are here and since you started advocating, have you been approached by the Chinese government here?
Not personally, but I receive phone calls very often, and many people said they also receive. Um, Especially like as soon as like when I was in Tennessee, I went to a couple places to talk about this Uyghur issues. Some places, like for example, I went to a college, Christian college, and I give a talk in a school in a classroom, and then another place in Nashville, in a masjid, they have this. The program like once in a year, like a Muslims festival, something like that. And I give a display of the pictures and I give talk. And right after that, I got a phone call from a Chinese embassy in Houston, Texas, and they said you should come and to the embassy and sign a document. And that kind of phone calls I received a couple times, but other than that, I receive phone calls almost every day. Sometimes like
Yeah, I receive them too.
yeah. So I think that's the different. But that's the main phone calls I received a couple times from embassy to come to embassy. That was like not automated phone, like a person called me. So I think that's the only thing. But other than that, I didn't get any threatening anything. Is it frozen? Is it frozen?
I'm sorry, guys. I've been having a rough internet day today. SubhanAllah. I was just letting you know that I also get calls from the Chinese embassy, and sometimes they tell me I've left my stuff behind and I should come and collect it. And like, I've never been to the embassy before. What did I leave behind? What do I need to collect? But subhanallah, it's anything that when you start pushing, but that's when you know you're pushing the right buttons, that they're listening and things are. And I wanted to ask you, how do you balance that? How do you balance the need to speak up with the need to keep your family safe? And what doesn't act, because a lot of times um, we don't allow people to look at that, right? It's easy for someone who doesn't have investment there, a human emotional investment there, to come up and speak about this, because it's really not your life on the line or your loved ones' lives on the line. But here, just the act of speaking up and bringing attention to this, it can affect people. It can affect real human beings that you love. Please share that with us. Like, what is that thought process like? It takes so much courage.
Yes, in the beginning of 2000, right after my brother was arrested, I was, like you said, worried about the safety of my mother, my sisters, and they said, "Don't call me." And I was removed from their WeChat account, and then I didn't call them for a couple of weeks. But I was so much worried, I couldn't sleep, and then finally I got the courage to call my mother. That was 16th of August 2016, and she said, "Don't call me," and hang up the phone. That was the last time. Okay. Then I was very much worried about her. And then I heard the news that people who went to Hajj will be arrested, or people who have relatives abroad will be arrested. Then I waited until the end of the 2016 not to call them. And then finally I got the courage and a call, and their phone all they said it's non-existent phone numbers. So I couldn't call them anymore. And then in the beginning of 2016, I began to give my testimony on YouTube, and I began to go to the protests, but still worried about, just like other people. And then 2018 started. I become really courageous that I should speak up. I should give my testimony about my family members. So recently, what happened? There's a trend. Maybe you heard about that. People who become very active, become in the news, being in the news, their relatives are being released, and then a lot of Uyghur people being active since then. So we should, okay, here's a trend. So China now wants us to be silent. So they just release the people who are active. They release their parents, their loved ones, and then they become silent. So so that's a trend. I hope China will watch this program, and hopefully they will release my brother, and hopefully I will contact with my mother and my sisters, because all of them are innocent. But there are millions of Uyghur people who are being tortured in concentration camps, in prison, and forced labor. They become victims of the organ harvesting, medical experiments, all kind of terrible things. Even those people outside of the prison camps, they live like an open air prison, because we just went through this this special Ramadan. We all stayed at home with our family members together, eat halal food. But the brothers and sisters, the Muslim people there, they're not only banned the Ramadan, but they are forced to drink alcohol and eat pork. So we have to speak up. We have to fight for the freedom of Uyghur people.
And this is something that, you talked about organ harvesting, and inshallah we have a show planned where we will be talking in detail from experts who have this. So a lot of people have said that this has happened to the Tibetan people and there's a movement in the Falun Gong in China that they have been doing that to them for many, many, many years. So is this another reason why Uyghurs are convinced, because this is something that is already happening there? If you could speak a little bit about that.
Yes, there are a lot of news coverage that China already started this organ harvesting to the Uyghur people for many years. It has been a secret, but recently it was been published. So we knew that, and we already knew that they did the organ harvesting to the Falun Gong practitioners, Tibetans. And I heard Falun Gong practitioners, their kind of religious belief. They don't drink alcohol, they don't smoke, they don't do like all kind of terrible things. So China wants like the clean, the healthy organs. So that's why they targeted the Falun Gong practitioners. And then now they know Muslims, we don't drink alcohol, we don't smoke, we eat halal food, and then we are a good target. So, and then this organ harvesting, organ transplanting business booming in China. So now I saw the video, they said like we are selling halal organs. So the rich Muslim brothers and sisters in Middle East probably come to China to get the halal organs for another lives. So this is terrible. Things are happening. This should stop. We should tell the world what happened. We should tell the Muslim brothers this is another Muslim brother's life.
Yes, exactly. When we, when you see these ads, I mean, there's ads placed about halal human, organs. What does that even mean? How can this be halal when it's like Uyghurs on demand, halal organs on demand? Normally, anywhere in the world, if you need an organ, you get put on a list. And it takes many, many days sometimes to find a match. But here, it's because of the DNA has been already been tested. A lot of DNA samples have already been taken off the Uyghur population. And so they know exactly, they can match your DNA and match a Uyghur person's DNA, and they're all in the camps already, and just pick them up. And just hearing, like I've been to several hearings on Capitol Hill where experts describe what is taking place. And to me, it makes me sick to my stomach to think that any one of us would think that this was okay. To save our loved one's life, we would take your loved one's life and then call it halal. That is the sacred ruling that applies to both us and to you, because we're bound together by Islam. And to use Islamic terminology to justify killing and people to harvest their organs, and are now like how many reports come back when people are even released from these concentration camps, they go home and within weeks they pass away because they have been either experimented on, or they have vital organs have been removed to a point where they can't function as human beings anymore. So this is something that, to anybody who's watching, imagine if this was your family, that was up for sale, their organs up for sale, because some rich people somewhere in the world could afford to just, swipe a credit card and buy an organ. And imagine being on that other side where you don't know whether that could be your family member, right? So this is something that, much more education needs to be done. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, I urge you to research this. There's a commission report on this. The China Tribunal has done a report, an in-depth report on this. And we will be discussing that in detail in a future show, inshallah. Brother Suleiman, one of the things that, many people first did not believe that these were the largest concentration camps since Nazi Germany. Then, activists and advocates and Uyghur rights activists, beat the drums. And for the past 2-3 years, the beating of the drums has now made it mainstream news. And we understand that the American government right now has, an agenda. Alhamdulillah, good for them. I'm glad they have an agenda, because that makes the Uyghur agenda, we can use it for our benefit. Now, in that, that there is all of this happening, that there's a lot of concentration, lot of focus on the concentration camps. People are forgetting that many of the detainees are now moved into prisons. So yes, they might be emptying the camps out, but where are the detainees going? So, and this is something that you can talk to, because this is something your brother is experiencing.
Yes. So in 2016 started, China locked up millions of Uyghur people into concentration camps. And then these camps exposed to the world, and people all over the world, they're fighting for their relatives and talking about where's my relatives, or they're showing the pictures. And then China said, no, there is no concentration camp. There's no such a thing. And then recently, the news tells us that China moves the people, the detainees in the concentration camp, to the prison, and they sentence them to 10 years, 20 years kind of prison sentence. And then also send a lot of young people to the labor camps. So now they said, no, we don't have these concentration camps. But the people are in prison now. They are in labor camps. And then a great portion of them already moved to other parts of China near the big hospitals. They build the prisons next to the hospitals, and then they do this organ harvestings. And these are already in the news. And I saw a picture. It was a viral last year. A brother from Qatar, he came to Beijing to get his heart transplant and then kidney transplant. He got both organs transplanted, and it was successful. Those Chinese doctors stand next to him. It was a big bunch of flower. They were taking pictures that it was successful with halal organs. So they are doing like advertising. So people all over the world come to get this organs transplanted. So like you said, here in US, I looked at these statistics. If somebody needs a kidney, they have to wait and waiting list for at least 1 year. But if somebody needs a liver transplant, they have to wait 3 to 5 years to get a liver transplant. And for the heart, the same. But if you need a liver or kidney, and you call China, they said within a week, they will prepare a liver or kidney or heart to transplant for you. And it says if it fails, next day, they will prepare another one. So that means they get it from the prison, maybe from the Uyghur people. And then I was so much worried about my brother. He is a young, healthy man. I hope he is He is not one of them, but I have to testify for him. He should be released, and he is innocent.
SubhanAllah. Brother Sulayman, this fact and cannot be so applaud you for your prayer to adopt your brother's cause, be working, and every
Yeah, internet must be very slow. I couldn't hear anything from you. So I couldn't hear anything, any questions from you. Your internet must be very slow. Can you repeat your question again? Is that end?